Tonight on The Deep End, research shows more than 1 in 5 children and adolescents have some form of disordered eating. Those numbers went up during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is Eating Disorders Awareness Week. So here on ARC Seattle at 10, we wanted to have an in-depth conversation about nutrition and body image. Molly Shen spoke with a psychologist at Seattle Children's to learn about a particular eating disorder you might not be familiar with.
I think a lot of people, parents, are probably familiar with anorexia, bulimia, binge eating, but there's a fourth common eating disorder that you wanted to tell us about. What is it called?
It is called ARFID, which stands for Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder.
And what is it? What does that mean?
So it is an eating disorder that's really different from the other types of eating disorder that you just mentioned, in the sense that it does not have anything to do with the body image concerns. It is a disorder solely about food and eating. People with this eating disorder usually feel like they have very limited interest in eating. They feel like eating is a chore. They don't have the appetite for it. Some people can also have a very strong preference towards the sensory characteristics of the food. So things like texture, temperature, flavor of the food.
It sounds like something that could be just thought of sometimes as, well, that's just a really picky eater. How does somebody know the difference? Or when does being choosy about your food just go a little bit too far?
That's a really great question. I hear this question a lot from caregivers. So I like to explain that our food preference is really on the spectrum, right? Everybody has their food preference. Somebody likes spicy food, somebody like non-spicy food, somebody loves cilantro, somebody hates it. And then when the pickiness becomes very extreme, to the point we are seeing a lot of the psychological or physiological consequences, things like weight loss or unable to gain expected weight in children and adolescents, when we are seeing things like being very dependent on tube feeding, on nutritional supplements, or some psychosocial issues like not wanting to eat in front of other people, not wanting to go to social settings where there are food involved, like parties or family gatherings. We think the eating has become disordered. That's when picky eating becomes ARFID.
That makes sense. I mean, it's really impacting just all aspects of life at that point. So if somebody is concerned maybe that their child has ARFID, what are the first steps they should take? How do you get diagnosed? And then what type of treatment is there?
Yeah, so in terms of the diagnosis, the best practice is to have a multidisciplinary evaluation that should involve a mental health provider, a dietitian, and a medical provider. We think the key element to ARFID treatment is exposure. We think avoidance is what keeps ARFID going. So the key element to treatment is really to break the cycle through exposure. Depending on which subtype the ARFID is, we have different exposure tasks that we can help the patients to practice in order to really test their hypothesis about eating and to help them regulate their feelings, practice the coping skills. And one of the main manualized evidence-based treatment for ARFID is called cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, for ARFID.
Generally, how long does treatment last? Because it does sound like quite a process.
Yeah, I think it, of course, varies from person to person. We usually think it's somewhere between 6 to 12 months.
Well, thank you for walking us through all of that. Really important information for parents to have.
Yeah, thank you so much for having this opportunity for me to talk about this diagnosis.